Welcome to It's All Mental, a podcast from Every Turn Mental Health. Mental isn't a bad word. There's no health without mental health. We're here to talk about every high and low. No limits, just good conversation.
Hi everyone, you're listening to It's All Mental, Every Turn Mental Health podcast, and this edition is focusing very much on parents' mental health. I'm joined today by Yemi and Anthony, who this is the second time we've spoken on a podcast, Yemi, so thank you for joining me again, and Chris Harper as well. So thank you both for joining me today, really appreciate it. I'm Jo, I work on the comms team and I'm the host of today's edition. So probably best to do introductions first. So Yemi, I'll come to you first, if that's okay, if you just want to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Yemi. I'm a PWP, which stands for Psychological Wellbeing Practitioner at Every Turn. So my main role is assessing clients who are dealing with mental health difficulties and also carrying out treatments using CBT as well.
Chris, over to you.
Hi, so I'm Chris Harper. I am the Infrastructure and Applications Manager for Every Turn Mental Health. Been here around 7 years now. Great place. My responsibilities mainly are the top and bottom of it is make sure that everyone has internet at the end of the day, no matter where you are, if you're at any of our satellite offices or head office. And then the application side is all the apps that you guys use in regards on your laptops, Zoom, Vonage, all these different apps. So kind of look after all of them different bits and bobs, as well as support the service desk team for the day-to-day cases that you guys send in. But yeah, very busy.
Great. And obviously this edition of the podcast is very much focusing on parents' mental health. So I'm going to just launch into a bit about I'm a mum. I have boys who are 8 and 11 now. And Chris, you're a parent as well, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, got a two and a half year old daughter. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can give some real life experience on this as well. So
yes, we can. Yes.
watch out, everyone. So I just wanted to sort of chat honestly, probably directing the question first to you, Chris. How has parenting been for you so far? And this is obviously quite a broad question. But how have you found it?
I'll be honest. So my daughter, she's obviously my first child. So everything's kind of brand new to me. So as she grows, everything is new. So being a parent to me is it's very rewarding, but it's tough. I'll be totally honest, it is tough. But I think the rewarding side of it totally outweighs all of that. But yeah, it's really, really good. Like I say, it's really hard to explain, like being a parent when it's your first one. I think every day is a learning day as well. And I'm an only child as well, so I got told from my parents that because I'm an only child, I obviously they didn't want me to feel like I was alone being an only child, so they brought me up really close with my cousins. So they were more like my brothers and sisters, and I'm still like that now in my 30s, but still very close to my cousins as well. But yeah, me as a parent, I think I'm very soft. I think my daughter can be, I think I am round her little finger, I would say, most of the time, but that's just a typical dad, I just try to make her happy, but it's you have good days, you have bad days, but it just is, it is what it is. I mean, obviously you've got 2 kids as well who are older, so you have a lot more experience, so
experience is a tricky word to tie it to this parenting malarkey, but I totally agree with everything you're saying there, Chris. I think for me it's it's definitely I always say it's the hardest job I've ever done, but it's also the best job I've ever done. It's the most rewarding job above anything else I've ever done, career-wise or personally. But yes, there are challenges
There
that come along with
are.
that. And I
Yeah.
think there's something around the sort of, for me, it was sort of, I want to say the suddenness of becoming a parent, and it's not sudden because, like, you know, I carried my children for 9 months. That's quite a substantial amount of actual time. But the when they arrive, I suddenly had very much a, well, what do we do now? There's no,
Yeah.
it's not like your car where it comes with a manual and you can clearly look up, you know, there's a problem with the windscreen wipers on this car, right? There's someone who is a professional who knows, has told me how to do it and how to fix this. I think I very much approach parenting as we're, you know, if we get to the end of the day and everyone has been fed, watered, is relatively happy, I'm doing an all right job. But that's, you know, 11 and 8 years in, you know, that's taken a long time to get to that. So,
well, going back to what you said, obviously, if you like, well, especially with me as well, like my first one, obviously, as soon as my daughter came into the world, it's like, right, okay, I've got a little human to look after now. She is my responsibility, and that's it from day one. So when you walk out of the hospital that day, and in the baby carrier, you know, and getting in the car, coming home for the first time, and now you're walking in your house for the first time with a little baby, you're thinking, oh, what do we do? You know, but I think it's really important that, you know, there's support around the element of, you know, like when I walk in this house with this child, now my little daughter, what do we do? Do we make sure she's fed, she's looked after, she's changed, she's warm? All these different things you need to think about, but it's all the time. And
it's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It does take the toll on your mental health, really, when you think of all these things all the time. But I think as the days goes on and you get into a routine, I think you kind of, I think it's going to settle down a bit and kind of just, I think you just roll with it, to be honest. But I totally understand.
And Yemi, do you see this in your sort of in your day-to-day job, obviously talking with people around their mental health? Do you hear this a lot from parents, that it's not that we're, you know, we don't all hate our children, we don't all slate them, we're not saying it's a terrible thing to do, and I definitely feel very privileged to have children. You know, I'm very privileged to do that. But do you hear this? Do you hear the sort of same things from parents when they come and talk about their mental health?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the time, especially with new parents, like new parents and parents who of older children. So I usually get like a lot of similar phrases in different spectrums. So a lot of the time parents will you know, preface it by saying, I do love my children, you know, I do love them, they mean everything to me, I wouldn't trade them for the world, etc. And obviously those are things that you know that exactly, but it's shortly followed by but it's really difficult, but it's really challenging, and even for, you know, for parents who, like you were saying, Chris, you know, new parents, or that's their first child, you know, I have heard a lot about, you know, the fact that they've just been thrust into this and it's changed their life. You know, there a lot about that, and how it does impact your mental health as well. Because a lot of parents, you know, say, again, they do love their children, but it's that role that, you know, they can't escape from. Like it's like it's not a role that you can tap out of. You know, so
you can't take annual leave from being a parent. You can't even take sick leave. You can't take sick leave. Chris, I'm sure you've had this where you know, they've been poorly, you've been poorly, but you can't not
no
stop.
other way around it. You just gotta kind of get on with it. You know, if you're feeling ill and the little one's feeling ill, you kind of, that's more physically and mentally mixed together. It can drain you away, you know. But I think that's just being a parent, really, you know. And I think there's no other way around it, you know. But I think it sounds really negative when we talk about this like that. But at the end of the day, you'll do anything for your kids, you know. I think that's the thing, totally. You know. So
and have you experienced any sort of negative stigma, Chris, around like being a parent? Because I've certainly felt very pressured being a parent, and like I have to almost live up to maybe some stereotypes, and you know, that I really struggle with this I think more people need to be talking about the fact that no parent is, you know, perfect, for want of a better phrase,
Yeah,
that we're all
yeah.
essentially muddling through and
Of
trying to
course,
figure it out
yeah.
as we go. But I
Yeah.
think that's something that's not really talked about.
There
Have
is, there
you
is a sort of
experienced?
there is sort of the element of, like, I think in today's society as well, in this generation, you know, I think there's a lot of social media out there now. You know, you've got TikTok and Facebook and all these different platforms, and I think that, like, you've got to be really just careful. I don't know if that's the right word, on like posting pictures of your little ones and all these type of things, because I don't know. It depends on the type of person you are. Do you want to advertise your daily life, what you get up to with your kids? And then are you thinking in your head, are these people who I'm showing these pictures to, are they judging me, how I dress my daughter, or all these things, you know? And I think that the stigma side, yeah, that you know, it's really a hard one to answer. But to me, I just think that, you know, the pressure that comes up being a parent, and going out for like a day out to the park or anything like that, you know, you yourself as a parent look around at other parents to see how they interact with their kids in the park and how they do it different from me. When I take my little daughter to the park, I'm just got my eyes on her all the time, and I know I'm looking at her and I'm just making sure she's okay, she doesn't fall off the slide or anything like that. But I'll be honest, I can look around in the same park and I see other parents who are nowhere near their children and just playing on the phones, you know, they could be, and they're not looking after their kids. And it's that sort of, like, you just, you
There's a
understand
lot
where
of
I'm coming from.
judgment. Yeah,
There's
there's
a
a
lot of
lot of
judgment
judgment.
around, and
Yeah,
so that's the best way I could explain that.
yeah. And do you hear this again, Yemi? Do you hear this from parents about this kind of almost, we're not competing as parents, well, we're trying not to compete as parents, but we're always trying to measure ourselves up, I suppose, against other people and how they're doing it, and am I doing it right? And
yeah, definitely. So again, with that word stigma, obviously it's about kind of what is like the perception, the negative kind of perceptions or things that have been placed on people. And so yeah, definitely see that in like new parents where maybe people have opinions about you know, whether, like you said, like what they're dressing their children in, what they're feeding their children, you know, where they're going out to, whether they're going back to work, and you know, as a new parent, or even, you know, people with older children, there's stigmas there where it's like, you know, you should know this about your child, or you know, if for example maybe their child is having a difficult time at school, or their child is the one who is maybe like the issue, you know, and things like that can really impact like parents, because they feel that, and they can really stop people from actually seeking the help, which is often what we find with a lot of older clients, where they never sought help for quite a long time due to kind of the stigma attached like to it. And you know, it's almost like, as a parent, well, you should just know, or you know, you shouldn't have a child that is being disruptive and things like that. So yeah, I think that does come up quite a lot.
I think that's a really interesting point you touch on there, because I know I do that myself. It's like, but I should know this. I should know what the next hurdles, if you like, are that my, you know, 11-year-old who's going to start getting into, you know, all the preteen behavior, and we're already seeing all the hormones rushing and everything. It's like, but I feel like I should know that. But then, like I've said earlier, you know, it's not like a car. Kids don't come with a manual. So there's something, I think, around collectively us all talking about it a bit more, and feeling able to sort of say, you know, none of us really know what to do. And obviously all our children are so individual that it's like, well, that might have worked for you as, you know, a parent doing that, but that's probably not going to work for me and my child because of the relationship we've got, or you know, how they are as an individual. It's I think you definitely touch on something about that I've definitely at points throughout, you know, being a mum, I've put my blinkers on and gone, well, everyone else seems to be doing it that way. I'll either give it a go that way, or I should know this. I think there is a huge amount of pressure. Do you feel that, Chris?
I think just touching on the fact that I think a lot of people as parents compare their children to other children. And if you feel like them other children are behaving better than your child, then that's right, fine, that's okay. But it's the fact that no child is the same. You know, like I think when you look at other parents or they look at you and you think, oh well, my daughter didn't start walking until she was about 15 months old. But I know my close friend of mine, his little son didn't start walking. His little son actually started walking when he was 10 months old. And you think, oh wow, okay, well, why didn't my daughter start that early? Like I think a lot of parents need to like realize not every kid's the same. It doesn't mean that they're slower than the other. It doesn't work like that. They all have their own development cycles, and they'll get there. If it takes a bit longer, it takes a bit longer. It's absolutely fine. So I think there is a sort of like no child is the same. That's all I can really say about that.
I think it's that expectation. I think it's that expectation of setting like that standard almost. It's like there is to me now. I'm already feeling that there is no like. I've come to realize there's no like standardized way of parenting. It's like the more parents I talk to, the more I kind of feel that we're all just feeling through it and we're just getting through it, and we're and it's like and that's okay. I think that's okay, but I think the real stigma around that is that because not many people say that out loud or talk about it quite openly, I think it does feel quite shut down, and then we do all measure against these unachievable targets. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
It is. I think there's a lot of people who are like for me, I'll be honest, I've never really asked for help at all, other than like for family, just to look after my daughter just for a few hours so I can have a break. But on the more like professional help, in regards to Yemi's support, I think myself, I've never asked for help on sort of Yemi's professional level, just because I feel like I don't know if I feel too proud or I'm scared to ask for help, But I think I think myself or whoever does have children, or if they are going through any problems, like just try and there's no shame at all going asking for help, I believe. But there's a stigma how people look at that and go, oh well, what are you asking for help for? You should really know how to do this. But there's no shame, asking for help.
That brings me on to another question I was going to ask, and Chris, obviously go into as much or as little detail as you feel comfortable on this, but how do you feel that your mental health has been affected by being a parent, and not necessarily by, I'm phrasing that in the sense of not by your children, but by all of the pressures, the outside pressures and the stigmas that are attached with that? Have you felt that you have? I certainly have. Like,
of course, it totally changes. Like, if this is the right terminology, it changes your brain chemistry, I think, when you have kids, because you wake up in the morning, they're your number one priority when you get up in the morning. And they're your number one priority all day until they go to bed, really, And I think it can have a lot of pressure on your mind. I mean, just sitting here now, I know my daughter's at nursery now, and I know she's absolutely fine, but you're always thinking ahead of like, right, I'll go and pick her up later on from nursery. I'm going to get home. What am I doing tonight? What mood is she going to be in tonight? All these things that you just constantly go through your head. But it does affect you mentally, and I'll be completely honest. Like, I think the most mental health side that's really affected me, and I will probably talk about this in more detail, is the financial side of things as well. Childcare ridiculous at the moment, as you know, are
ridiculous.
Ridiculous. I mean, we've on a more personal note, our nursery's putting their fees up again next month. Obviously, and I know the government's doing their best to offer these 15 hours per week and then 30 hours. But that's just another side of it. But the mental health side, it can feed on your mind financially. How am I going to afford these childcare costs? Because they're not cheap. So some parents, including myself, it's the cost of a mortgage per month. It's crazy. And when you start thinking about the financial sides, then you're thinking, are we going to manage? Do we need a budget on other things this month to pay for this? Or it then starts raveling in your head, So you've got to kind of really just think, are we going to manage? Do I need to ask for help? You know,
it's that mental load, isn't it? That's what I phrase it as when anyone asks me. It's like, you've almost got, as a parent, you've got like the practicalities of being a parent, so you need to get them up, you need to ask them, for anything like my boys, 11 billion times to get their shoes on and coat on to get out the blooming house in the morning. But you've got those practicalities, exactly that, Chris, that you constantly, I feel like you're constantly feeling like you're 20 steps ahead. So already, yes, I'm sat in the office doing this podcast, but I'm already thinking, have we got something in for tea? Who needs to be taxied to which club tonight? Where are we going? And then there's the practicality of it, but then there's the additional things, like you say, the finance. How do we afford nursery this month?
Of course,
I'm so newborn stage. How do you come into the office and not feel like you need to go off and have a kip in the corner because you're so physically tired from not sleeping? There's all those sides of things. Yemi, do you hear this in terms of parental mental health, that it's that kind of, there's the practicalities, but also the what I call the mental load as well, because that's a lot of pressure for people to deal with.
So as you were going through those, I was thinking about, there's this treatment that we use, which is called worry management, which is literally what it says. It's learning how to manage those worries, and there's different types of worries, and one of them is practical worries. And practical worries are things of, I need to get this done, I need to get this done, I need to sort this out, this needs to be sorted out, etc. But then there's also the hypothetical ones, which is around the, what ifs. What if this happens? What if we end up without this? What if we're not in a position to do this, etc.? And it's kind of like the worries about the future that you don't know if they're going to happen or not. But, a lot of parents definitely deal with that. That comes through like quite a lot. And I think as well, I know you mentioned when you phrased it, originally, that, sometimes it's not necessarily, it's not your child that's necessarily causing the anxiety, but it's obviously everything around it and the role. But obviously there are sometimes when, some people are unfortunately in the position where like it could be, directly related to like their child as well, and like concerns. And ultimately the same worries pop up of, am I a good enough parent? What am I doing wrong, and things like that. So that does come up like quite a lot. And so what we tend to do during those times is practice something called normalizing. Normalizing is like a form of like empathy within therapy, where it's basically letting parents know it's normal to feel like this, it's normal to feel like that, it's normal for this to happen, and kind of focus on what's in their direct control. Does that make sense?
That all sounds really practical, helpful advice as well. I wish someone had given that to me at like almost newborn stage, because exactly that, you do feel like you flung into it, and this overwhelming responsibility of I now have a human to care for and look after, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But that whole normalizing the worries, and actually that's fine to feel like that, but appreciate that everyone's feeling like that and we're all in it together. I think that's really, really sound advice. Definitely. So what types of Chris, I'll come to you first if that's right. What types of support have you found available to you, as probably as a dad? Have you?
So the support that me personally, I get, I'm very fortunate. I've got grandparents on both sides, who can help on a limited basis. That's the thing. So I think, so myself, basically, I've got my mum and dad. They both work full time. That's the thing. So for example, if my daughter takes ill, me and my wife are pretty much stuck, because if my wife's at work, I'm at work. My parents are both at work. We don't really have anyone to look after my little one, because my wife's parents, they're retired, but they're not really mobile enough to look after a 2-year-old. They really want to help, which is a shame. But I think with having an active toddler running around, and they also live in a townhouse and lots of stairs, they wouldn't be able to manage all day with a little 2-year-old. I think it would be different, maybe, if my daughter was older, like, and like, about your kids' age. I don't know, but that's our personal experience. But yeah, that's pretty much the support all we have is just grandparents, and then obviously nursery during the week, 3 days a week. But yeah, I mean that's as far as I get for support mainly. I think
and that's overwhelming in itself, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, because obviously you feel like you hate to ask for help from someone else if they've got their own plans. You hate intruding on their plans, or if let's just say my parents do happen to have a week's holiday and they are off, you have that element of, oh, should I ask them to look after my daughter on their day off? You know, you kind of have them thoughts all the time. But I think that's the from my experience. I've got lots of friends, and all my family's got kids. They're all in the same boat. They all also rely on their parents for looking after the kids, you know.
And in terms of your like mental health and your like support systems that you've got in place for you, so when you do have those days where it's, you know, has been just one of them days, which we all have, and you know, it's been a bit overwhelming, who do you go to like go like, it's just been one of them days? Like, do you know, where would you go as a
I'm quite close, well, back to my parents again. If I've had a rough day, or if my daughter's having a meltdown, or if I need advice on anything to try and work around the temper tantrums, the terrible 2s to 4s, you know, we've all been there. Me being a first-time parent, I try my best to do what I think's right and try and calm her down how I see fit. But if it's not working, or if I feel like I'm having a rough day, you know, it's nice just to get on the phone, you know, with my mom or my dad and just have a little chat and just talk about what me and my daughter's been up to today. And I'd just tell her, my little daughter's had a bit of a tantrum today. This is how I try to deal with it. And it's just nice to have a chat with a familiar voice, because I'm very close to my parents as well, and they're great for advice on all things kids. So that's my go-to support really, and for general chats as well. I've also obviously got my cousins as well who've all got kids with their dads, who I know like it's when I talk to them with their dads as well, they all have hard and rough days as well. But because they're all very similar age, between 2 to 4, and it's I hate to say it's nice to know that they're going through the same thing, because it's obviously not, but it's not just me in our wife going through that. It's, you know, it's everyone. You know? So
there's something in that, like, I was going to say the phrase collective misery. That sounds absolutely terrible. But there is, I know exactly where you're coming from. There is something in just sounding off, isn't there? I've got like, you know, me and my husband sometimes feel like we're like one of those like WWE, is it? Like the wrestling tag teams where it's like, right, you deal with them now and then I'll go and deal with them. It's that like, you know, who's going to be good cop, bad cop, do you know what I mean, today? And it's that from a practical day-to-day level. But then I jump on the phone to my mum and go like, oh, they're driving me, you know, or, you know, no, they're really good, and you know, school reports have been fantastic, and yay. But it's nice, and I feel like there's quite a lot of support out there for mums. But how have you found that there's quite a lot of support out there for dads? Because I'm really interested to hear from this side, like how you felt.
I don't know anything for support for dads, if I'm honest. That's the thing. It's all at the end of the day, for my view, it's all about the mothers. I think, in my opinion, like I think the mothers are the number one parent, I would say, and there's that little bit of the element of the dad's always a number 2. Like it's always the mothers come first. You know, but for me, I've never known, I wouldn't even know where to go for support as a dad, which is obviously might be a question that Yemi could help, but to me, I wouldn't know where to go as a dad for help, other than if I've got a good relationship with my family, then I'll just go to them. But at a more professional level, honestly, I wouldn't really know.
Yeah. And Yemi, on that point, do you find that there is a sort of more of a gender split in terms of mums coming to ask for help or dads coming to ask for help, or do you see that side of things, or is it kind of not a thing? Is it?
Right, so definitely. So I think what you were saying in terms of that split, definitely do see it a lot where I do get a lot of, I think it's because obviously traditionally women have been seen as like the primary caregiver for quite a long time. You know, whether they're a new parent, whether they've been a parent for years, it is seen like that, you know, societally. And so a lot of the time when I do hear from, you know, pressures of being a parent and managing mental health and, you know, worries and anxiety, a lot of it is coming from women. So I definitely do see that the split is definitely not even. Definitely a lot more hearing from mums, like quite a lot, due to maybe assuming that primary caregiver role. And also wanted to just shine a light on obviously you know, single parents as well. People who are, you know, dealing with being a parent alone, because obviously they fall into that niche of where they don't have that support necessarily.
No.
Some single parents do. They've got like their grandparents, and then they've maybe got, you know, like they've got a good system going. But I do see quite a lot of time, a lot of, you know, parents in need where they're almost at their like last tether. They're a single parent. They don't have a great relationship with their family. They don't have a great relationship with their children's other parent, and that can be very challenging. You know, as you can imagine, obviously it's really difficult with having support and then doing it on your own, like I can't imagine. And so with that comes more the things about just respite, like literally just being able to rest. You know, those are the concerns that come through more so than the than sort of like the other ones about like maybe developmental changes and stuff. And obviously what Chris said as well with the societal view on it being very heavily the mother is the primary caregiver, probably comes that lack of support or awareness of the support that's out there for men, for dads. There are some support services that, you know, I'm happy to go into in just a moment for dads who are single dads just in general, and yeah, dads with like struggling with mental health difficulties as well. So yeah, I think that is really important, because there's definitely not a even split in terms of, you know, men coming forward, dads coming forward and saying that they're struggling with their mental health and parenting.
Yeah. I think there is a real stigma around everyone's doing this and they're doing it their own way, but I think it's elevating those voices. And I think this is why I was so keen to do this edition of the podcast, because like I genuinely feel as a parent I've had pretty much no clue in what I'm doing or how we're doing it with our boys. And it's like, you know, touch wood, they're all right and they're quite sound, and you know, we have up days, we have our down days, but I think the more you can lean into those support networks that you've got, the more you can talk with other parents or non-other parents, and everyone's just realizing that it's not going to be picture perfect every single day. It's not going to be the Instagram, you know, beautiful photo that you see every single day, you know, 5 minutes before everyone hated each other and they were all fighting. You've got that one snapshot in time. But, you know, I think the more we can talk about being a parent and be honest about it, you know, like we said earlier, Chris, the fact that we would die for our children, you know, they're our sole purpose. I very much feel. My boys are everything that I do, but sometimes really hard and it's really overwhelming. And I think the more ways that we can open up those conversations and just get people hearing that, to go, actually it's okay. Because one of the stigmas I've really come up against as a mum has been, you know, I have had people say to me, whether it's on social media or other places, I've had people say to me, you know, you're criticising your kids again, you know, you're very lucky to be a mum, you know, you decided to have them, it was your choice, you know, all of that. And all of that is true to a certain extent, but it doesn't mean that it's not sometimes a bit hard, or sometimes you just want to go, it's not picture perfect. So I think the more avenues we can open up, whether it's mum, dad, or any other, you know, spectrum of a carer that, you know, makes up the rich sort of, you know, societal families that we've got, great. I think it's really, really important. So
no, I totally agree.
Yemi, on that point, In terms of support that people can get from us in terms of accessing a talking therapy, what would you advise parents to do if they are feeling like a talking therapy would be a really good way to, you know, to access some support? What's your advice for somebody feeling at that point?
Yeah, so I would say if you are feeling, so generally in terms of mental health issues and with parenting, the little catchments are overwhelmed with caring duties, lack of support. That lack of support is really huge. Being a single parent, having a child or children with atypical developing needs, special needs, you know, things like that, that really contribute to like this burnout and the lack of motivation, lack of energy. I'd say that, you know, if you are experiencing that, it is really important, and it's valid enough for you to get help. Because I think what I do hear a lot of the time when they first come with their first assessment is like, I don't know if I'm that bad, you know, in terms of, I don't know if I need, you know, the support or what you can do. And I think that's the thing, isn't it, about being a parent, is like where you're putting someone else's needs first all the time, you're not really, it can be really easy to become disjointed from your personal needs. So I think if you're starting to notice, if you're starting to notice that more days than not, you're feeling overwhelmed, more days than not, you're feeling that lack of support, more days than not, you're lacking motivation, you're struggling to get yourself dressed, things like that, then I would say initially that's a really good time to seek support. And you can do that by speaking to your GP first, you know, talking to them about, you know, your mental health difficulties, and they can redirect you to our talking therapies that are obviously under the NHS. So that's one key way that a lot of people do refer in. And then another way is obviously, you know, searching for talking therapies or NHS IAP therapies as well, which are free talking therapies that you can have and access. So that's a really good way. And then there's also some support services that are more specialist. So they're not, they can often with these, they provide maybe like something like a helpline, or you know, resources, or they, you know, can signpost you to other places. So those are things like Family Action. These are places like Home Start for like obviously younger children, Gingerbread for single parents. There's a site as well called Dads Unlimited, which is for like dads struggling with mental health difficulties. Really important. And there's also some schemes as well that can be really helpful. One is called Men in Sheds, which is a funny name.
About these. I've heard about this.
It's basically to support men's mental health with the initiative of like putting it into something creative, whether that's like building, whether it's painting. So it's almost like that, especially for like maybe the older parents, or, you know, parents who they don't have like a they might not have like a let out, or they might be that strong, you know, parent for like their you know, their partner or their children, so they might need that space to kind of, you know, let go and share. And obviously you've got like Mum's Net, you know, things like that that a lot of people are familiar with. But yeah, there's certain organisations that will fit certain people, which I'm happy to obviously share and attach to this after the podcast.
For anyone listening or watching, obviously we'll put links to all of those organisations and support and how you get in touch, etc. in the biography. We'll make sure there's links in there so people can access that support as well. But that's been brilliant. No, that's great. And Yemi, you just touch on the talking therapy side of things. What sort of talking therapies? Because I know we know it because we work in this industry every day. But but in terms of someone who's never really heard of talking therapy or what that is, what sort of talking therapy would be available? Because you mentioned CBT before. So could you just explain some of the possible?
No problem. So CBT is one option. CBT stands for cognitive behavior therapy, And that is for people who are, you know, dealing with, you know, a range of difficulties with their mental health. And so what the main purpose of that is kind of helping you to be able to manage your mental health a little bit better by challenging some of your thoughts. You know, that's the cognitive side, challenging some of those really unhelpful thoughts that you're having, you know, challenging some of those worries as well, learning how to manage those worries. So that's all the thoughts, that's the cognitive side. And then also the behaviors as well. So the things that you're doing, that, you know, maybe checking up on your baby a lot whilst they're sleeping, or the, you know, going ages without eating or not showering or not getting up, you know, things like that that you're doing for yourself. They'll all contribute and are kind of like contributing factors, but also results of like mental health difficulties. So it's working on challenging those cognitive side and also the behavior side in a way towards, you know, helping you to manage your mental health like a little bit better. So that's usually like the first point of call that we do offer in terms of talking therapies for parents. But obviously, depending on the range or what clients are disclosing, for some people it might be that something has happened, you know, a long time ago to them, and it's only just maybe been triggered now because their child is at a certain age, or because they've had, you know, baby recently, or because their child has now left for university or something like that. And so with that, we'd probably be looking more at maybe the counselling side of things, having more of an open space to explore some of these things. Really just depends on what clients are disclosing. But yeah, those are usually the options that we do offer. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's really good, because that almost demystifies. I think sometimes we talk about talking therapies and people have got very quite set perceptions of what that is and what that isn't, and whether that's correct as well. So that's really helpful, I think, in just demystifying that a bit, and sort of taking the scare out of it, I suppose, a bit as well. You know, when we say CBT, I think it sounds like quite a scary acronym that, you know, could be painful, and it's not at all. It's just, but that's really helpful. That's really, really good.
I definitely find that. Oh, sorry.
No,
I was going to say, I definitely do find that like a lot of what clients say is, you know, you ask them maybe like what do they need, or what would they like to get out of therapy, and they just say, I don't know, like I just get on with it, you know, I just, you know, or you ask them around motivation, because motivation is usually a big indicator of where you're at mentally. Motivation, tiredness, energy levels, those things. And a lot of, you know, parents will say, well, yeah, I am lacking motivation, but I just do it. I just get on with it. Whereas someone who they don't have, you know, a child, or they don't have someone who's dependent on their care, if they're lacking motivation, they will just withdraw back. Whereas I do find a lot of the time parents do tend to push it to quite the extreme because they just feel like they just have to. So yeah, I know that that can be challenging as well. And so that's part of what we, you know, work on in the assessment, is really trying to, what we call funnel. So really trying to funnel down, okay, what are the issues? What would you, you know, hope to get out of this number of sessions, and what would you, you know, start to introduce? And that can be really helpful in thinking about what, you know, clients want for themselves and stuff.
Yeah, that's quite novel, I think, for us parents, of trying to think for ourselves, like trying to put ourselves at the front of the queue. I think me and you both laughing and nodding along there, Chris. It's like it's hard sometimes to suddenly think, oh yeah, it's about me. But yeah, definitely worthwhile engaging with and doing, definitely. This has been absolutely fantastic, guys. Really, really appreciate your time on this. Just one final thing from me. Chris, I'll come to you first, if that's all right, in terms of, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to parents who feel like they are struggling, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say just reach out for support, like what Yemi's just touched on there the last few minutes. You know, just 100%, if you are struggling with anything really, don't be afraid, don't be shy, just go out there, ask for help. You never know until you try. You know, I think it's really important. There's no shame in asking for help these days. I think it's really important, and on a more down to earth level as well, I would say, as a parent as well, just 100% make time for yourself as well. That's really important. You know, try and do the things that you used to, because what happens is, what I found in my personal experience is I like gaming every now and then. and I never get time to do that now with the little one and working full time. But try and find the time to do things for yourself that you used to enjoy before you felt like you didn't have any more time. So I think it really does help to sit back reading a book or watching a movie, whatever you used to do that made you feel relaxed, and just time for yourself, really. That's my best advice. That's all I can really say on that.
I totally agree with everything you've said there. My advice as a mum would be to definitely try and find some time for you, even if that's like a snatched 5 minutes where you might get a lukewarm cup of tea, but try and get that 5 minutes if you can, more if you can, and take yourself away to get a bit of you, definitely. But I think my piece of advice would be to just appreciate that we're all kind of muddling through this.
Of course,
none of us have really got a clue what we're doing. And just to I think I'd love to see like more parents, more carers just being honest about it as well, not painting this picture on social media that we've got the perfect children, we've got the perfect life, and it's like, it is hard. It's like I've said before, I find it the most rewarding job I've done, I think I ever will do. But that's it's all right to say that actually today has been hard or today has been really rough. And definitely what you were saying, Chris, about reaching out and getting support. I think even if it's just that phone call to a friend, a loved one, anyone that can help, having conversations at work if you can, and then accessing professional helpful support if you need it. So Yemi, any advice from sort of from your side of things on that, in terms of anyone that feels that they're struggling?
So I would obviously echo what Chris has said, and you as well, with regards to reaching out for help. I think that that's really important, and obviously necessary, and obviously it's important to make time for activities for yourself, but I know we've spent like most of the session talking about how difficult that can be to do. So what I would say is pace yourself. That's something that we do talk about a lot in therapy, is pacing, and what's the least intrusive thing that you can do at the moment, most manageable thing that you could do that could help you get some of that activity in. So is it, if you're someone that maybe you love to go for walks, or it helps you like clear your mind, or whatever it might be worth waking up a little bit earlier, or maybe if you are someone who likes, used to like painting or whatever it might be, could it be that, you start off with maybe just committing to just 5 minutes on it, or just 20 minutes on, picking out some paints or doing something small. Basically, the idea is starting off small, and then building it up as you go. And we do find that a lot, where as the parents children are like older, you're hearing more about, okay, I went fishing this weekend, I did this, I did that, because obviously they're getting more independent, the children are, and so they're having more time for themselves. So I guess just not trying to put too much on yourself at once, I'd say.
Just look after yourself as well. If it's easier said than done, but I've heard stories of moms and dads, they can go a couple of days without taking a shower, or all these everyday things that you normally do, that they tend to forget about, and sometimes they forget about looking after themselves because they're so hung up on the fact of looking after their little one. So I think it's just going back to the same thing again. Just if you can, just try and take time out for yourself. And like for me personally, obviously I'm married, I've got a wife, so my wife Rebecca, if say for example this weekend we have plans to go out this weekend with the little one, and we can take turns, like if Rebecca wants to go out on Saturday with the little one, then that's fine. I'll have time for myself, and then I'll take the little one out on Sunday so Rebecca can have time for herself. There's that element of, if you've got the help there, that's how we work it anyway.
And I think there is, just coming on to that point, I think there is, and I think we've mentioned this already in the chat, I think it's about not feeling guilty about that, because I feel a massive amount of just mum guilt because I've taken myself off to do an hour's I went to a class called Clubbercise last night, which is, ridiculous in my 40s, throwing myself around with glow sticks. But that's what makes me happy. So I'm like, right, I'm going to do that. But taking myself out of the house for 45 minutes. And yes, I'm in a very privileged situation that my husband is there and he's got them, and my kids are older. So they're probably, they've probably got the face on the screen for that 45 minutes. But, take the wins where you can. But I think there's something definitely about, someone once told me a long time ago, and I'm not a massive fan of the phrase, but someone said, what was it? You can't fill from an empty cup. And that's really stuck with me as a parent. It's like, actually, that's spot on. Like, if I'm at rock bottom and on my knees and have 0 battery left, I can't give to them. I can't give to anyone. I have to do that. And that really stuck with me. But it is hard. It is really hard to do practically. But I think you spot on, both of you, with that advice of trying to find those little snippets of time. And it doesn't have to be, you're not going to go off and do a marathon. You're not going to go off and, scale a mountain. But if you can just find 10 minutes to have a cup of tea in the morning when it's quiet, that does me the world of good. But not feeling guilty about doing that, not feeling guilty about putting yourself a little bit first and going, do you know what, for me and for the sake of everyone else, I'm doing this for me. I think that's a really, really good point on that. So
totally
brilliant. Well, we're all going to go off, and Chris, I'll be giving my boys a big hug because I feel incredibly guilty that I've probably slated them loads on this, and they're probably,
I think I'm going to do the same as well.
Because we do love our children.
I do love them.
It's just a bit hard sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. But thank you so much both for joining me for this issue of the podcast. It's been an absolute joy. For anyone listening, like I've said, we will include all of the links in the bio so you can access the information and the support. And I look forward to the next edition of the podcast and hopefully speak to you both again soon.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks. You.
Take care, both. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to It's All Mental, a podcast from Every Turn Mental Health. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to follow, rate and share. See you next time.